the transformation was not just my body, it was the way
Mm-hmm.
I thought about myself. It was feeling that I could leap tall buildings in a single bound, that I could overcome obstacles, and also that I could help others. And every time I hit an obstacle, which have been many in the last 25 years, whether it's physical or emotional or mental, I always come back to the training and the nutrition, and I whip myself into shape and keep on going.
Welcome to the CoachMD Podcast. I'm Dr. Charles Glassman, bringing you 3 decades of experience as a physician and a coach. Join us as we navigate the maze of medical advice with real-life stories, empowering you to take charge of your health. In our That Happens segment, guests share transformative experiences, reminding us that we're all human and not just patients. So get ready for a journey into healthcare reimagined, where empowerment and discovery pave the way. Hey, it's Dr. Charles, aka CoachMD. In my over 30 years of medical practice, I made it my goal to help people create strong minds, healthy bodies, and unshakable spirits. And because of that, I launched the CoachMD podcast so I can invite people on my program who often have to take their healthcare in their own hands. Not to say doctors aren't important. You shouldn't go to doctors, but doctors aren't necessarily going to lead you down a path that's true wellness, that embodies mind, body, and spirit. And there's so much information now out there that people can just become self-educated and really, and many times educate the doctor. I learned so much from my patients over the years, just bringing me information about their own health issues or health concerns. And it was great. And so my guest today, Jan, is just an amazing individual who has a lot. And I think I know the answer to the question, that she took a lot of things in her own hands because she had to. And we're going to talk today about her transformation and what she's doing to help others transform. And we're kindred spirits, and you'll learn more about that and why we're that in a minute. But Jen, thank you so much for coming on the CoachMD podcast.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm looking forward to the chat.
Yeah. And, Jen's from Australia or New Zealand? Is it Australia, right?
Australia, can't you hear the Aussie accent?
Yes, I can, yeah. And I knew that. For some reason, I questioned myself for a second because I did know that. And so Jan has launched Ageless Transformations and the Ageless Method. And I read a lot about you, and you mentioned about your own health challenges, what kind of propelled you to go through this transformation yourself before you started to help others. So what did that look like? What was going on?
Well, it was a combination of things. I went through a nasty divorce at the age of 40, and basically everything fell apart. My body, my mental state, my emotional state. And it was a really, really traumatic time for me. And I moved out of home, and I moved in with a girl who was a personal trainer. And she said, Jan, look, how about, you stop all of this wailing and put your angst and frustration and hurt into something positive, like pushing some weights. And so she put me on a 12-week program, which included weight training and nutrition. And she said, why don't you aim to get up on stage and do what they used to call a body sculpting competition?
Wow.
And I've gone, are you nuts? This is the girl who wouldn't say boo to anyone, who was just so fragile. But I had nothing else that could pull me out of my funk. And so I followed her advice, her beating. Living with the girl was like, there was no out from it. So I did this 12-week transformation, and I got up on stage in a bikini and high heels and came second.
Wow.
But it absolutely transformed my life. And I thought at the time I would love to share this process with other people. The transfer was not just my body, it was the way I thought about myself. It was feeling that I could leap tall buildings in a single bound, that I could overcome obstacles, and also that I could help others. So, I still have a lot of issues with my diet and niggling pains and all sorts of things. But hey, I'm 66 next month. But I've been incorporating this for 25 years into my life and my lifestyle. And every time I hit an obstacle, which have been many in the last 25 years, whether it's physical or emotional or mental, I always come back to the training and the nutrition, and I whip myself into shape and keep on going.
Yeah, that's a great inspiration. Going back to when you were 40 and the trauma, like you said, and it's, I'm sure your whole world blows up. But what happens so often is that somebody going through a trauma like that will go to the doctor because they're feeling anxiety, they're feeling depressed maybe. And I always say that, I was a general internist, so that's a general doctor for adults for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And I'll have to say that the majority of the doctor visits for sick visits were people coming in because of either lifestyle choices or emotional issues. And so, and the lifestyle choices causing medical problems, and the emotional issues are dealing with things that are going on in one's life that aren't really, the doctor's not really knowing
Can't
about
fix.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does the doctor do? So when you were going through that, did you go to a doctor at the time?
No, I didn't. And nothing against doctors, but I am a nurse. I nursed for, many years, and I decided to take an alternate route and not rely on someone else for my health. And so I don't think it was a conscious decision, but I avoid doctors like the plague.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and the reason why I asked that is because if you did go to the doctor, and that's why I preface my show always that I talk with people who often take their health in their own hands, and people, and especially doctors and healthcare practitioners and conventional healthcare practice will say, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you telling people to do that?" And I'm not telling people to do that. I'm saying by necessity, because if you did go to the doctor, you probably would have been put on some type of pill to chill you out a bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Calm down, dumb me down.
Yeah.
And the thing is that the more in tune you become with your body, someone else, I don't believe, can tell you what's going on. They will do, all sorts of myriad of tests to come up with a solution, or else they'll just give you a pill. And that's never been my way of doing things. I don't like putting foreign things in my body. Number one, because I'm, sensitive to a lot of different foods, and I'm just very clean. And, you know, that's evolved over the last 25 years. And I think a lot of it has had to do with stress. And so, no, I don't go to doctors.
Yeah. Well, you know, in my career, when I used to get a patient who was recommended by a nurse, that was the greatest flattery, because nurses really know, especially the ones in the hospital, they
Yeah,
really know what's going on. They
yeah,
really know, you know,
yeah,
what the doctors are doing. And you as a nurse know that
yeah.
if you did go to the doctor, like you said, it would have been focusing on the wrong stuff. So it's good that you had a friend who steered you in that direction. You know,
Yeah.
that's
And the thing is, you know, my training, I think, one of the last people who trained on the wards rather than going to university and then having, you know, a couple of weeks with the patients. I was with the patients day in, day out, seeing how they responded to different things. And I think it was just, you know, a process that I went through that I decided that I would look after myself. And I think it was a combination of things. When when the marriage failed, disintegrated, for want of another word, I made the decision then that I was going to look after myself and I wasn't going to rely on anyone else to do that. And I think that incorporated not only my lifestyle, but my health as well. And again, as I say, it wasn't necessarily a conscious decision, but I think I know myself better than anyone else does.
yeah, I'll say,
Particularly at 66 years old.
yeah, you know, I'll say, and you know, obviously physically you look great, so you know, you're doing
Thank
something
you.
right, you know. So I think that what's really important to understand here is that Jan took it upon herself to get better, to heal from emotional trauma. But see, emotional trauma is not just in your psyche. Where it's our brain is an electrochemical organ, right? So when we get input and we sense danger, threat, vulnerability, it's going to come out with a electrochemical response, hormonal response, electrochemical, the chemicals of the hormones, and cause us to fight or flee. And that is very detrimental to our body. And if you just go to the doctor to kind of quell that, to put a band-aid on that, you're not really healing. The best way to heal is through sublimation. And sublimation, the idea of sublimation was a word that I really never truly understood until I went to medical school and our behavioral health courses, whatever. So basically what sublimation means, you transform energy from a negative source into a positive source. So you kind of move it, you sublimate. So chemicals, for instance, sublimate when they go from they transform from, let's say, a solid form to a gas form. That's sublimation. So here, Jan, you sublimated from a stressed out, traumatic form into a self-empowering form, and that was
Mm.
through the fitness. I like to talk more about that because it wasn't just the body sculpting and the bodybuilding, because that's the byproduct of the hard work that you did. So kind of going back, and then we'll talk more about what you're doing now, but going back, what were some of the things that you felt were most helpful for you to get over that trauma? And anybody who's listening who's been through a divorce, that is trauma, and that your body sends out it's an electrochemical impulse, which can be very detrimental unless you sublimate and turn it into something to kind of overcome that. So what were some of the things, if you can remember, that you did? I know you had it was a 12-week program, but was there anything that stands out that you remember that really got you over that?
I would have to say that it is the strength training. It took me from an emotional state and channeled it into something that was physical, that I could see a result and feel a result. And I say this to everyone in my programs. Strength training not only builds muscle and, you know, your bones and all the rest of it, but it emotionally and psychologically, I don't know the science behind it, but it absolutely changes your state of mind and your emotional state. And it taught me to look at things differently. And I say now that every cloud has a silver lining if you wait long enough. And, you know, I look back at that time 25 years ago, and I thought my life was over. And I look at it now and I see the transformative effect that it has had on me and on the people around me. You know, it changed not only my body, but my mental state. I went from being a nurse, then a sales rep, into joining a company which was something that I had no idea about, but I decided, Jan, you're going to take control of your own life and not rely on anyone else. So I became a recruiter in a rail engineering recruitment company, and I knew nothing about any of those things. And, you know, the CEO said to me, so Jan, you know, what do you know about rail? Nothing. What do you know about engineering? Nothing. What do you know about recruitment? Nothing. And then I said, how much can I earn? And he said, your earning potential is completely up to you. It is commission only, and you take home 50% of what you bill. And I became the highest earner, I think, within 4 months. And it was the belief that the strength training showed me that I could transform the way I thought about myself and my position in the world. And every time I hit a hurdle, and as I said, I've hit many, I go back to my strength training discipline and knowing that, Jan, if you do this, then you will get this result. And, you know, it's been my game plan for the last 25 years. And as I said, I just want to share that, the benefits with that with as many people as possible. And, you know, just to jump forward a little bit here, I was my mum's live-in carer for 8 years, and I saw the devastating decline in her physical and mental state. And watching her just impacted me. You know, I was with her 24/7. And number one, we became so close. But once she passed, I thought, number one, that's not going to happen to me. I'm going to stay independent, because if I hadn't have been there, she would have been put in a home.
Yeah.
And I think that's criminal when we can take control of our lives, our independence, and stay out of aged care. I mean, this is my mission. And if I can share the benefits of strength training with as many people as possible so that they can stay independent and vibrant and vital and live life with vitality, I say, then that's my goal. And sorry to take the floor there.
No, please. That's awesome. Well, you're preaching to the choir, Jan, but it took me a while before I really learned about that. You know, I was always active physically, pretty much physically fit, but never really did strength training. And I had a friend who urged me. He always, oh yeah, you got to take this. You have to come with me. We have this class, and the class he was talking about was connected to a physical therapy facility, and the head physical therapist he knew, when he talked to him, he said, why don't you start this class so when people they finish their physical therapy, they can transition over to the workout class, and you can start doing that. And he had been doing it for a couple of years, and I just didn't have the time. At the time, I was still practicing and just so busy with my family. And so I did. We have a little bit, a little bit of a workout room in our basement, but nothing great. I had a treadmill, so I did some treadmill. I kept some weight, whatever. It wasn't anything formal. I tried to work out a few days a week, but it wasn't great. I kept thin, but I can't say I was physically fit. So one day I went there, and the exercise class, they called it K-Fit, and it was kind of like a CrossFit type of workout, but it wasn't CrossFit. And I went to a couple of those. I had never done a deadlift before. A deadlift, for my listeners who don't know, is basically teaching you how to pick up something off the floor, right? To get you so you can pick something off the floor. I mean, seems like a nothing thing, but many people can't do that. Or, overhead thing, lifting weights overhead. Well, why do you need to lift weight? Well, if you can't lift some weight overhead, you're not going to be able to reach up in the cabinet and get something for yourself. So I went to a couple of those classes and I was hooked. I joke around with him now that you created a monster, because he really has. I mean, I'm all in on that. So I want to talk a lot about how important it is, because I've learned, and like you said, you're going to be 66 and I'm going to be 65. And I like I said, I was always fit. I did karate in my 20s and 30s. I ran a couple marathons. There's nowhere the way I was healthier then than I am now, or in better shape, because it is functional fitness. You're using your whole body. You're getting an aerobic workout, plus you're getting strength. And so let's talk about that, because you're talking about strength training, building muscles, and people think, oh, I don't want to get buff. I don't want to get muscles. But it's not about that. Our muscles move our skeleton. Okay. Without muscles, we're very frail and we age very poorly. And so when you talk about strength training, Jen, like what I know you have, we'll talk about the strength training, then we'll go over the whole picture that you have in the Ageless Method. But what can you tell my audience, the importance of strength training in your 50s, 60s and over?
Yeah. Well, particularly, perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal, our bodies change. Unfortunately, we lose muscle mass, we lose bone density, and everything just becomes so much harder. And particularly for the menopausal women, we lose, not only do we lose muscle mass, but we lose bone density. And that is, which means if you combine those two, if you lose your muscle mass, you lose stability. If you lose bone density, it means that your bones are easy to break. So say that you're walking down the street, you're tired, and there's, something that you trip on. If you don't have the muscle mass in your legs, your glutes, your abdominal, your core, to be able to right yourself, get over that trip and stay upright, then you're likely to fall. And with bones that are less dense, it means that they're easy to break. And there are the highest statistic of deaths over the age of 50 are from broken bones that haven't healed. People end up in wheelchairs, in care, and they die. And that is preventable. That is completely preventable. Everyone is looking for the magical pill, to make them feel good, lose weight, look better, all of the different things. And it's called strength training, and it's really easy. And yes, I'm sorry I'm getting on my soapbox, but it's...
Get on it. Preach, preach, preach. I want to hear it.
It's so important and scientifically proven that strength training helps with all of the age-related diseases. Your cancers, your dementia, as I said, muscle loss, bone density. It is scientifically proven. I mean, you're the doctor. But if everyone has the ability to include strength training into their daily regime, why wouldn't you do it? If you can live a stronger, more independent life as you age. And yes, we always think, when we're in our 20s and our 30s, that's everyone else.
Right.
I'm going to stay young forever. But you're in your 40s and your 50s and your 60s, and you're seeing your parents and your uncles and aunties and all the rest of it suffering and ending up in aged care because you haven't got the time or the ability or the wherewithal to look after them. So they end up in aged care. And so if you have the ability to stay out of aged care, stay independent, then why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. Well, what you're talking about it has been shown. I mean, it's shown in multiple studies. We know that upwards of 36% of elderly people will die within the first year of a fall, of a fracture. And it's very important. The postmenopausal women who do start losing bone mass at a rapid rate right after menopause, when estrogen falls off, and the way to combat that are with exercises that put pressure on the bones. And the thing that's going to put pressure on the bones is going to be strength training and dependent exercises when you're on your feet and when you're jumping and when you're doing motions that will prevent you, and as you said, the ability to right yourself after a fall. And I think of I was helping our son was moving couple months ago, and we were helping him, and one of the stairs, my foot, it like caught the stair in a funny way, and I kind of like twisted a little bit, and I felt as though I could have really hurt myself, but I was able to correct it in a split second without hurting myself. And I attribute that to my body, my muscle tone, and the muscle mass is so important. So if somebody's listening to this and they've never done strength training before, how would they get started? What's the way that you would suggest?
I would find someone that can help you, because it's, strength training, there are techniques to it. And if you're including some weight into that, then if you do it in the wrong way, you can pull different muscles. So I would seek out someone that can help you, and that is generally a personal trainer or something like that. A lot of people do resistance work with bands at home. And if you don't have a personal trainer that you can go to, or a gym that you can go to, I offer different programs.
Yeah.
Was that the lead in? Was it, Dr.
Yeah,
Charles?
sure. Why not? Why not?
Well, I mean, because I think it's so important to do things properly, I have created different programs, some for at home and some for in the gym, agelesstransformations.com. And I think I go back to when I started training with the trainer 25 years ago. I didn't know how to start. I didn't know how to, what exercises were required to do different body parts, because, you know, we can't just work the legs and we can't just do sit-ups. And as you said, you know, to be able to push something or open a cupboard above us, we need to involve all sorts of different muscles. And without someone to show you how to do things, then you're likely to do them in the wrong way. So yes, I have several different programs, which I think is very, very clear that they're all videoed and with very clear explanations of every exercise, and there's nutrition guidance in there. There's all sorts of different programs. Some are just nutrition. Some are my 12-week program that I did 25 years ago, and I did so I've done four different competitions. My last one was in May this year.
Wow.
65 years old, and awesome. I won the comp.
Woo. All right.
So yeah, that's the one that I think is so life-changing. It gives you time to make mistakes, get back on track, and find a lifestyle program for you. Because coming from not knowing anything about weight training or nutrition to coming into a new way of life is not something that's done straight away.
Right.
It takes time. I believe you need to be kind to yourself as you're doing it and not beat yourself up. And it's a lifestyle change. But what's the alternative? Again, I say to everyone, if you're over 50, then you need to include some strength training and proper nutrition into your lifestyle, because you've got another 20, 30, 40, 50 years, hopefully. And why not live it with joy?
Yeah, I'll say, you know, it's interesting when you said that if you, you know, like yourself, you didn't really have any idea about nutrition or strength when you were getting into this. And isn't it funny, because you're a medical professional, I'm a medical professional. They don't teach us really in medical school or nursing school. And, you know, that's why if I would suggest really, you could go to your doctor if you go through an emotional trauma like Jan went through. But if you get into a program, an exercise program, and I think that's the best advice, you have to seek out somebody who knows about it. Because when I first started, I thought I knew. I did not know. I didn't know what a deadlift was. I didn't know what a squat was.
And you can do it wrong. So
absolutely,
so
yes, and hurt yourself, you know, and then get really down on it and say, "Oh, this isn't for me." So, you know, So I had an injury years ago that led me to have to get a hip replacement in 2018. And so I had started this exercise program about a year before. And then I started the actual CrossFit about 3 months before that hip replacement. When I had hit my hip replacement and they sent me home, and they said a physical therapist will come to the house, came to the house, and he said, "Okay, I'll be there in 3 days." So he comes in 3 days and he says, "Show me what you've been doing." So I get down on the floor and he goes, whoa, what are you doing? You're not supposed to get on the floor. I said, that's what I've been doing. And so I showed him, got on the floor. I got back up. I walked up the stairs. This was 3 days after a hip replacement. And he said, okay, you don't need,
You don't know what you're doing.
right. But no, he said, you don't need me anymore. That's what he said.
Okay.
Just do the, the exercises, the core exercises for the hip, but keep doing what you're doing. And then it was about 8 weeks after that, there's a CrossFit exercise called the 12 Days of Christmas, which, like the song, they have different exercises that you do and I did that. It was modified, but I was able to do that. And the only reason why I could do that is because I started getting my muscles in shape after only a year. I was able to do that. So, I've been doing it ever since. But the thing we talk about, how your muscle tone and your strength training does help with the emotions and does help you deal. And like you said, you felt so much more invigorated and strong. It helped you both in your career and your personal life and professional life. And yeah, I think that and the story you told about your mom is so important. My dad is 93, and I encouraged him to do exercise, and he started Silver Sneakers. It's called now. It's called. They have another name for it, a more politically correct name, I think. It's not Silver Stick because they want to open it up to everybody. So it's I think graceful aging or something like that. But he works out 3 days a week, and they teach him, how important the strength training. But as you said, getting somebody to guide you, to teach you the importance of certain exercises is so important. So, Jen, in your training, you mentioned nutrition. I looked at, your Ageless Method talks a lot about hydration. So talk to us a little bit about kind of how it's a total transformation when somebody, it's not just about lifting weights and getting buff, but it's a total transformation. Because I don't look at 65, I don't want to be like, really like muscle bound or whatever. I want to be physically fit. I want to have my muscles so they function, but it's a multifactorial process, right?
Yeah, look, as you say, it's not just about lifting weights. It's about nutrition. It's about including cardiovascular work, hydration, getting enough sleep, and I also say including something that brings you joy into your life. In my, as you said, my 8-step method. This is what I've learned over the last 25 years, which has brought me to 66 next month. Right. And a lot of people will say that, I've got injuries and I can't do this, or I don't want to be, muscle bound, so I don't want to do that. And, I don't want to include cardio, and I don't really like protein and or I cut carbs and all that sort of stuff. And I've learned all of these things over, as I said, the last 25 years. When I did my competition when I was 40, I didn't do any cardio work at all. And when I did my comp at 50, I included an hour's cardio. At 63, I had to increase the cardio, and at 65, I had to, again, increase the cardio or do it differently. And a lot of people will say, oh, no, cardio is not important. I'm telling you, if they say that, they're not over 50. Mm-hmm. Because if you are wanting to get rid of belly fat, and particularly with women, it's belly fat, mm-hmm. Cardio is really important. I came up in the era of we wanted to be slim. Slim was the most important thing. We didn't bother about muscle really, so we cut carbs. And hey presto, you'd lose a kilo or a couple of kilos, and you could fit into your jeans or your dress or whatever. And it's only over the last 10, 15 years maybe that it's become so evident of how we need to include carbohydrates and protein and fats, fats into our daily diet, because without the fats we can't absorb all the nutrients, and without the protein we're not building the muscle, and without the carbohydrates we don't have the energy to do it all.
Good
and
point.
You being the doctor, you've got more of an idea of that, but it's so important to have all of those different things in the right percentage. If you have a really healthy diet, but you've got too many calories coming in, then you're going to be putting on weight. It's calories in, calories out. And so again, you need to speak with someone who knows what they're talking about and can guide you, can adjust your diet, judging by how your body is working towards the food and exercise that you're taking in. And then you throw in hydration. A lot of people don't have enough water, and it's easy to do. You get up in the morning, you have your water, and then you're busy during the day, and you get to the end of the day and you think, I've only had, I don't know, 500 mils or a liter.
Yeah.
We need, 2 to 3 liters a day to flush out the toxins, and just, keep everything. You think of a rubber band that dries out when it's been in the sun. That's what our bodies do without enough fluid in there. But I'm I'm taking the floor again.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, we are 60% at least of water. That's our so our muscles need water, our bones, the discs between our vertebrae need water. And it's our joints elsewhere need water. It's very important that, and especially if you're going to be exercising, you definitely need good hydration. And I noticed that in myself, that I would always I had this thing where my heart rate would get very fast. It would develop what I could self-diagnose as what's called an SVT, a supraventricular tachycardia, when I would do certain exercises. And as a doctor, I figured out, and this is the thing that, that's probably the best perk about being a doctor. This is kind of a side, being able to know certain things about myself and also my family. So if we ever went on vacation or whatever, it was good to have a doctor as a father, because you didn't have to waste a lot of trips, to the emergency room, wherever. But anyway, that said, I could self-diagnose, and I knew I was getting an SVT, and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? My heart must be working a little bit too hard, but why would it be working too hard? And the concept is that your heart is a pump, but the pump, it runs on two ways. The brain tells it how to run, how to pump blood, by its heart rhythm, but it also, what can let it work less and make it more efficient is it expands, and by that expansion, like a rubber band, it contracts. So if it expands and it's really full, it will give a good contraction and a good blood flow. So your heart doesn't have to go it doesn't get the signal that you're not getting enough blood. So I surmise that I must not be hydrated enough, that my heart is not expanding the way it should. So I upped my salt intake when I work out, and I made sure that before every workout, I would drink at least 36 ounces of water. And so even sometimes even more than that. And that cured it. That cured it. And, you mentioned about aerobics. There are ways, and it's kind of a plug for CrossFit, because we get a lot of our aerobics by lifting weights. Some of our training is through kind of an aerobic workout, or jumping on boxes or throwing up balls or whatever. But that gets back to getting educated about what you're doing. And that's why you have to seek out, if you can afford it, a personal trainer, okay? Because they're not cheap, but it's well worth the investment. And especially if you're thinking of something like CrossFit, don't just go to a CrossFit class. Any good CrossFit class will tell you you need to learn the movements before you go into a class. And if you can't quite afford a one-on-one personal, then you seek out people like Jan, who have a program online that are knowledgeable about the movements and can give you the whole totality of
the whole package with guidance.
Whole package, right? Actually, the whole package. And I wanted to, when I was talking about sublimation, you used a better word, channeling, which was better. That's more understandable, I think, than sublimating. Channeling that angst, that trauma, that emotional distress into something physical. And that totally neutralizes the negative that it has on you.
Yeah. And the other thing is that it's never too late. It's never too late to start. As I said, I started at 40, but after the 8 years of looking after mum, I was not in good shape. And on my 63rd birthday, I decided that I was going to do another competition, which meant the whole regime, the 12 weeks, the discipline and nutrition, etc. I pulled myself out of the gutter, basically, and at 63, and got on stage, won that. And then, as I said, again this year. And this year's was not necessarily for me, but I wanted to show everyone that at 65, you can still be the best version of you at 65. And I did it. And I think to myself, Jan, are you going to do another one at 66? And I always say, this is the last one. I'm not getting up on stage again.
Right. Well, we'll see about that.
Who knows? Who knows?
Right.
But, my point being that it's never too late. It's never, ever, ever too late to turn your life around. And, not just for yourself. And I go back to this aged care thing, but for your family and for your loved ones, because you don't want to put them through the trauma of watching you decline when you could have done something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I really started at 56, or no, about 58. Really started at 58, and I, people would say, "Oh no, you're always in shape." Oh yeah, it's the same thing when people say, "Oh no, you don't know what it's like. You can't gain weight." Oh yeah, you want to bet? Or
just watch me.
Exactly. Or like you're saying, you hear somebody, you're very positive, you're fit, but then you take care of your mother for years, and you kind of, things kind of unravel because exactly. So, it's persistence, and like you said, it's never too late. And if you want to age in a way that is different than your parents, because it was just kind of expected that I mean, you look at our parents when they were in their 60s. I mean, they were old. They're old. They're on their way out. They're on the back nine. I mean, that's how they internalize it. I remember I had a patient once that a doctor, he was, I think, 59 or whatever. And he came in and I sent him to the cardiologist, and the cardiologist called me on the phone and he said, yeah, thanks for the referral, Charlie. So-and-so, Mr. Smith, he's 59 going on 90 or whatever. But that's kind of what it was like.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what we were led to believe, that,
yeah,
it was just downhill from, basically from 50 to 60. It's just in the downhill, and there's nothing that we can do about it. Just,
yeah,
shut up and go in the corner.
exactly. And just,
Yeah, not anymore.
go out to pasture. No, and a lot of the change has been this idea that you could actually get stronger as you get older. And
Yeah,
that's a concept that was never, thought about. And
yeah,
I never realized it. And that's why I just never really lifted weights. And because I always thought about it, oh, it's these, knuckleheads in the gym, and they're lifting the weights and all this
knuckle
stuff.
draggers.
Right. Yeah. And no, it's so good for you. So,
Yeah,
yeah, Jan, thank you. This has been a great conversation.
indeed.
And yeah, and I definitely look forward to staying in touch. And so you mentioned earlier in the program about how if somebody needs some guidance, doesn't have any ability one-on-one where they're living, how could they get in touch with you, and what would you recommend the first steps to get in touch with you?
I would say go to either my Instagram page, which is jan.herdman1, and click on the link to book a call with Jan, or go to my Ageless Transformations page, www.agelesstransformations. And again, there's book a call with Jan or sign up for any of the different programs. But I always recommend people booking a call with me, so that I can understand where they're at, where they want to go, and what I think would be worthwhile for them. So yeah, I would suggest jan.herdman1 or agelesstransformations.com, Jan
Excellent.
Herdman.
And I'll leave these links in the description of the podcasts on YouTube, Spotify.
Lovely.
Apple doesn't allow links, but well, they might. Anyway, I'll put it there anyway, just in case. So yeah. So anyway, Jan, let's stay in touch. And
Absolutely.
yeah, thanks for
Love
joining
chatting with you.
the CoachMD podcast. And to my listeners and viewers, until next time, this is Dr. Charles urging you to stay strong in mind, body, and especially right here in soul.
Yeah.
Bye for now.